Hey guys, and welcome to Littleblackbook91. It is a fabulous, wonderful time again. I know you are all waiting, wondering when would I be back interviewing people from this fantastic, wonderful TV shows. Well, we're back here in 2025 doing it once again. And I have a wonderful, amazing guest. If you're watching Married at First Sight season 18, and then you watched our panels, you know that we had a lot of conversations debating the KARLA and the Juan situation. We were asking which side is right, which one's wrong. We were discussing, different topics, trying to understand where this particular marriage went wrong. Well, actually, we have decided that we've got Juan onto this particular platform to explain and able to share his perspective and his particular journey as well. Juan, how you doing today, Captain?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you guys for having me. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We appreciate it.
That's what I like to hear. Well, listen, first of all, anything else? We don't want to go straight into any of the Married at First Sight things. So I need to break the ice. We need to, break the ice.
Yeah.
It's a bit tense. So we need to break the
Yeah.
ice a little bit before we go into anything deep. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Please, go ahead.
Fantastic. Well, listen, we have a thing on this channel called human verification. We've got to make sure that you're human because, you work with IT section, so you understand this thing. We've got to make sure that you're in a robot or some.
I'm not AI.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? You be handsome AI if you were, but we've got to make sure you're human.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I have a few questions. I have a few idioms that are quite popular in the culture, and I wanted to see if you knew what the idioms actually meant. So just a few questions, just to warm us up.
Yeah.
And break some ice. Okay. So my first idiom is, I would do a drum roll, but I'm not very good at those. So my first idiom is ants in your pants. What does that mean as an idiom?
Ants in your pants. You're itching to get something out? Like, yeah.
I'll take that. Ants in your pants. One can't stand still. One can't sit still. So it was within the ballpark. I'm gonna let you have that one. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna let you have one. Okay.
I appreciate
Question
that.
number 2. That's all right, man. We're gonna give you some goodwill here. Question number 2. Okay. If you're an eager beaver, what would that signal?
Oh shoot, you got me. I don't know. I've never heard that one. That's a good one. I don't know about that one.
That's fair enough.
I was waiting for the traffic lights, like which picture has traffic lights.
I wouldn't even know that one. Coming from the British culture, I probably wouldn't even know that one. So you'd be winning that battle in that. Eager beaver just means someone who's very eager or excited to do something. One more question in the idiom.
All right.
Elephant in the room.
Oh, that's when we got to talk about the obvious.
And that's right. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to address the elephant in the room. Pun intended.
Yeah.
Okay. I got 2 more questions, and then we're going to get into know you a bit better. Number 2 question is this: iPhone or Android?
For me, iPhone. I'm just a really more simple guy, but what I've noticed is the smarter people have Androids because they're usually the engineers and the techie guys. They all have Androids. They're smarter guys than me, anyway.
I'm on Android, so thank you very much.
You're a smart dude. Yeah.
I am, and I'll take it all day. And my final question is: cereal in the bowl first or milk in the bowl first?
Cereal in the bowl first, for sure. That's like no, I can't even. Yeah, because you gotta, otherwise you got floating cereal. We need that stuff to soak up. You know what I mean? I want to taste the milk inside the cereal. I want it to
So make sure. You seem like someone who drinks almond milk.
No way. I'm whole milk all the way, man. Whole milk, steak. Yeah, no, fuck. Hell with some almond milk. It's got 0 nutritional value.
Fair play.
Yeah.
Fair play. I'm with you on that. No, listen, I think you've passed our human verification. I think you're a human being. You know what I mean? I think you're a human being. We'll put a little tick in there. We can pass on and get to the rest of the show. All right. Well, Juan, listen, I want to get to know you a bit better because I think what we saw on the show, I think we all make our own deductions. We all make our own observations. The show edits in a particular way as well. It wants the character and it portrays something to us. But we want to be able to understand you a bit better and get to know you. So let me ask this question. Juan, who is Juan and what is your actual story?
Yeah. What's like the time thing here? Because I don't want to rob you of any other.
You got up to 2 hours. But this section,
Okay.
we're going half an hour in this section. This section,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you got half
okay.
an hour.
Yeah,
So
no.
you
So I
your
mean,
time.
I'm a pretty simple, laid back type of guy. Very humble beginnings. Um, as you guys heard my story on the show, my family migrated from Colombia to the U.S. when Colombia was a hellhole. The cartels kind of ruled the cities that everyone lived in. So a lot of turmoil. Like I have a friend that her father actually passed away on the plane that Escobar bombed. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that story. Escobar planted a bomb inside a plane to kill a senator, and the senator ended up not even being on the plane, and my friend's father he was caught up in that plane, so she lost her dad to that. So it was kind of like that was like that was like your daily bread, man. We were dangerous. Colombia was pretty dangerous. So my family decided to come here and try things out, and it's worked. I grew up in a little town called Statesville, North Carolina. It's 45 minutes north of Charlotte, North Carolina. Kind of like country town, so out in the country. Really, really nice childhood. I mean, we had lived in a little neighborhood with a cul-de-sac, and we played football, soccer in the backyard, cornfields. A lot of good friends. We rode four-wheelers, dirt bikes, went fishing. I mean, typical Huckleberry Finn type. Out in the woods, camping, drinking beer, and acting like a fool. At 18, I graduated. I started working construction. I did that for about a year, and then I went to visit some family in New York. Got scouted by an agency to be a model just at the airport. So that's how I got into that. After I graduated high school, went up to New York for a couple months, and New York like spit me back out. Like I had no idea what I was getting into. Just went to some castings, and it just didn't work out. It was just so tough. It was expensive. If I knew what I know now, I think it would have been different. But anyways, came back to North Carolina. This whole time I was going to school. So I got a 2-year degree from a community college. And then during that time, I was working with my parents. My parents have a cleaning company. So I had one of their biggest accounts at the time, which is a company that fabricates scientific equipment and chemical fume hoods, biological safety cabinets. So anyways, at lunchtime, I used to clean the CEO's office there, and he'd always tell me that he wanted me to work there when I got done with my bachelor's. So I worked there for like 2 years. At like 22, I decided to move to Miami because I got signed by Next in Miami. And yeah, they're a good agency. I was with Ron Gerard. He's the director down there, good guy. So I worked in Miami, but I was doing school online at Gardner-Webb University. So I did that for about, it took me a little bit to graduate. I graduated finally at like 25, 26. And right when I was about to graduate, my mom called me and she said, "Hey, like the CEO of this company wants you to come work for him." I told him you were about to graduate. So I have a bachelor's in accounting, and I flew up to North Carolina. This was like in May. Had a meeting with him and the CEO that was getting ready to take his place. They gave me my first job, and this was just from being the cleaning guy. I moved back to North Carolina. Started working for them. I did a little bit of everything from estimating to project management, installation, marketing. That's actually when I came up with the idea for my app, FlightMate. And I ended up coming to Chicago with them because they needed a sales guy in this territory. And that's how I got into sales. And the rest is history. Here I am.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I think it's important to understand your perspective and your journey as well. I'm intrigued because, as you said, and I did see on your Instagram as well the model photos. I ain't gonna lie, you was a handsome boy. You're a handsome
Thanks.
guy.
Thanks.
I can see why they picked you up. And it's interesting to hear your kind of story that that you did the modeling, that you also were at your parents' company as well, that you actually went to NY, had to come back, that you were in your degree as well. So it's quite interesting to hear those perspectives. I want to be able to understand something. So for you personally, obviously, you've gone and done all of these kind of things, right? Achieved all these things as well. When you were a child, what was your actual dream? Does it match up to what you actually were doing in the end, or is it something else?
No, not at all. My dream as a child was to be a professional soccer player. So, and I didn't make that. It didn't happen. So here's the deal. I used to be. I'm still decent, but obviously I'm 38. So like I just do it for fun now. But back in the day when I was younger, I was very good, but I had a really bad injury. I snapped my tibia and my fibula, so my shin bone completely snapped in half. Like a goalie took me out, and then I had a rod put in my leg. So that really put a blow to my. And you know what? You can recover from stuff like that, but the problem is like a lot of it is mentally. Mentally, I just wasn't. It just really took a toll on me mentally.
I can understand that because I mean, obviously, we have a saying in the UK. I could have been a footballer too if my knee didn't go out, but I generally did my knee.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did an MCL. So, but I mean, I was never that good enough to be able to play like that. But I did an MCL, and yeah, once I had that injury, I said, you know what? Let's just stick to dancing and just enjoy ourselves and not do anything too strenuous. Because you get injured like that, it's painful.
Yeah. I kind of did the same thing. Like I just stuck to which in retrospect, like having that injury opened up so many doors for me. Because like think about the whole modeling thing. Think about like all the different moves that I made. So I have really just any door that's opened up in my life, I just walked right through it, and that's kind of been, I haven't never said like the whole FlightMate thing. I mean, the app, some people may think it's like crazy, a terrible idea. Some people think it's good. Some people, the tough part about something like that, it's a social media app. So you need mass adoption and it's tough to get that. But at the end of the day, like, so I got a quote, the company that designed that, the app, it was my idea. And then my brother, he's a computer software engineer. He kind of like made like a skeleton of what the app needed to look like. And then we brought in this firm called Design Lee out of South Carolina, and they ended up making it come to life. But when I got the quote, it was $200,000. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And I think that's what people need to understand is that I think in life, there's two types of people, and there's less of me type of people that are willing to lose by taking a risk. But that's why when you look at the concentration of wealth in the world, it's in a very small amount. Even within the US, if you look at how many people make over $200,000 a year, it doesn't make it in the double digits. It's less than 8%, I think. So when you look at those numbers, the reason that is the case is because of situations like me. There's not a lot of people that are going to say yes to a $200,000 quote and then come up with the money in cash. Because I don't come from a rich family. Let's remember that. I came up with that money, and like 75% of that money was mine. You know what I mean? And the other was like, usually the first round of investment in any company is a friends and family round. So like my parents invested a little bit. I have a few friends that invested a little bit, but for the most part, it's been my bootstrap.
Wow.
So that's the kind of risk that I'm willing to take. Like the risk and reward. And this was kind of like the same approach for Married at First Sight. Like I saw that there was a risk that I would go on the show, and my life would be exposed to the world, and maybe the experience would be good or bad, but the reward was finding a wife, which is something that we all want. Love, man, at the end of the day. I think that's what it comes down to.
I want to know where does that drive and that risk, being able to take that risk and take a bet on yourself come from? Because like you said, you came from humble beginnings. So where does that come from?
Yeah, I think it's part of it. I think it's been like kind of handed down to me by my dad, because he started a million businesses. He started so many businesses, but a lot of them haven't worked out. But the cleaning business does phenomenal. I mean, they've had it for like 15 years, and it does really great. Now, the other part is I'm very kind of philosophical and also very logical about the way that I think, very practical and straightforward. I assess situations. I think I'm more so better in doing that with like business or, or my work life, more so than like my love life or my personal life. Sometimes I think I can say too much, but I took an astronomy class when I was in college, and I just want to clear up that a lot of people get confused astronomy with astrology. Astronomy is much different. That's the physics of how the universe moves, right? So like Newton's laws of motion apply in astronomy because that's how the planets rotate around the earth, and everything stays in motion unless there's an outside force that acts upon it. There's an equal and opposite reaction. So whenever people take astronomy, a lot of people took it as an election, and then all of a sudden it's physics. Luckily at that time I started my career in college as a mechanical engineer, so I already had that background. So like one of the projects in that class was to build a telescope, a refractor telescope. So you have to have an optics bench. You have to figure out the focal point using different mathematical equations. And in that class, one of the things that stood out, I mean, I was 18, man. One of the things that stood out that my professor said is that on a cosmic calendar, so you know what a cosmic calendar is? So a cosmic calendar is how long the universe has been around based on like the Big Bang theory. And so we live in an infinite universe. That means that scientifically nobody has ever been able to prove how big our universe is. It's infinite. So, but on a cosmic calendar, our existence, like your existence on Earth, my existence on Earth, is the blink of an eye in comparison to Earth's existence in the universe. So think about that. Like you just blinked, I saw you blink. That's how long you've been around when you compare it to how long how long Earth has been in the universe. So like our life on Earth is so insignificant that why not take a chance? Why not go for it? And that's basically what drives me. I got nothing to lose, Before I know, I'll blink and I'll be 90 years old,
Life before you know, life is past and gone.
Life is past and gone, man. So you really got to go for it. You got nothing to lose, man. You got nothing to lose.
So talk to me then about having nothing to lose in that respect then. Because I think you gave a great expulsion like at the beginning of your life, coming from Colombia, coming to America. I want to know the adjustment that it required for you to make in your formative years, because that in itself is a risk that your parents took to take you out of that place and bring you to America, somewhere different, of course, for a different type of life. What impact did that have on you, having to, move from Colombia to America? What impact did that have for you growing up?
Yeah. So when I was a child at 6 months old, I was kidnapped, or attempted kidnapped. And luckily they didn't succeed. Who knows where I'd be now? But my babysitter, the lady that was taking care of me, she tried to kidnap me. And luckily my mom caught her, she was coming home as they were trying to leave with me. But what people don't understand is when I wrote the letter to myself, I read some comments of people who were like, well, how does that even affect him? How can he even remember that? Well, the things you guys got to realize is that when they attempted to kidnap me, my mom didn't have anybody to leave me with. So they had to send me to another city to live with my dad's sister. So I lived there for 6 months. I mean, at a year old, you kind of remember some things. And I remember like, I have faint memories of when I was like between 1 and 2 years old of like them sending me back to live with my mom, my real mom. But at that time, I thought my real mom was my dad's sister. So psychologically, that just caused so much childhood trauma in my head. Then when I was 6 years old, my parents decided to come here. So then they left us again, And growing up, I had a really bad temper. I had a really, really bad temper growing up, like through middle school and high school. And I never had like a really like normal relationship with my parents because I always had this subconscious kind of like negative feelings towards my parents, because deep inside I was like, these guys just kept leaving me. So I had a lot of abandonment issues that I didn't know that I had, And I think the critical thing about doing therapy is that what you're doing when you're doing therapy is you're trying to figure out the root cause of your reactions as an adult. And those reactions are childhood reactions. It's your 7 or 8 or 6 year old person manifesting his or herself in an adult body. And that came through with a lot of therapy that I did. I mean, I've been going to my therapist for like 4 years. And honestly, like the Juan you guys saw on this show would have never been able to navigate the situations that I navigated as good as I did if it wasn't for therapy. You know, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, man. I have a lot of work to do, but that's the part that I was able to uncover. Now, when I wrote that letter to myself, I think that was turning the page. So anyone out there that hasn't ever done that exercise, do it. I mean, it's so emotional and it's so great, especially if you've had a traumatic childhood, you know?
Wow. And you know, it's powerful that you mentioned, because I talk a lot about this with my clients when I'm coaching. I talk about this with my audience as well, around about those wounds, which is rejection, abandonment, and betrayal. Those are those are usually the 3 core wounds.
You're right.
And you mentioned about the abandonment aspect as well, and having to grapple with that. I'm wondering, you know, obviously, like I said, the last 4 years you've had to go into therapy. What took you into therapy? Because a lot of people don't do therapy, right?
Yeah.
We oftentimes, especially for those of us who are
Especially
ethnic
men.
minorities, men and ethnic minorities,
and minorities, yes. Yep.
Yeah. What prompted? What was happening in your life at the time that it prompted you to go into therapy?
Okay, so growing up, you know, my mom and I clashed a lot because we're very alike, you know, and the way that I handled those clashes was not right. Like I wasn't ever like aggressive toward any person, you know, but I would be aggressive towards things like breaking things, slamming the door, you know, getting loud, being very verbally abusive. And my mom would always tell me, Juan, like if you don't learn how to control this, like you're never gonna have a normal relationship. Like you're never gonna be able to make a woman happy. And as I really enjoyed my 20s and my early 30s. You know, like I was young, dumb, and full of you know what, and I had fun. You know, I really got the best out of it. I can't say like I can't hang my head about anything. It was really a phenomenal, life so far. But when I started to get into like my mid 30s, I started thinking like, you know, like I want to be married. I want to have a family, you know? So I met a girl and we dated for 3 years, and what I loved about this girl was that she was extremely smart. She was very driven. You know, she had a lot of those attributes, but where we clashed was she was like extremely reserved, had like very, very strong, social anxiety. And I'm like this person that's out there, like, so I felt like I was just being held back, you know? And I was like, well, what's like, and we just played this tit for tat with that. And we would get into it all the time. And finally, like we wanted things to work. So we were like, well, why don't we do couples therapy? And I found a therapist, and I would do 2 rounds of therapy a week. So it would be a couples therapy like one day, and then I would do solo therapy on another day. And my therapist, his name's Glenn, and he has a really cool technique. It's called walk and talk. So basically, you walk a mile, and by the time you're back, it's been an hour, and you talk about everything. And then, you know, he helps you. And what's cool about it is because you're always walking, it's the seasons, you know, so it's like it's winter, and it's like life. Life has ups and downs. So it's like the summer walks are better, the winter walks are harder. But at the same time, like that's a beautiful thing about life is that no matter how hard it gets, you want to get through it, you know, and you persevere and you push, you know. And after we broke up 2 years before I was on Married at First Sight, I kept going to therapy. And you know what, like, I think that's a testament to, you know, my intentions on Married at First Sight were real. Like I already been on that journey before. I had already been working on myself, and like, I've been preparing for myself for my partner, which is the partner I have now, you know?
So you took yourself into couples therapy with a previous partner, really to kind of like explore what was going on in terms of the dynamics between the two of you as well. You know, what were some of the ties that they made, or maybe some of the connections that they made with maybe why you felt the way you felt about that relationship, and maybe some of the things you experienced as a child? Like I said, you had to go through things and kind of, you know, push through some of those difficult moments. So what were some of the connections they made as to why you showed up in the way that you showed up?
With my therapy? Yeah, it was just like all those abandonment issues. I think what Glenn was saying is that um, you know, it was almost like we had so many issues, and I think a lot of the issues stemmed from me being afraid of losing her in the relationship, like being abandoned again. You know,
Mm,
at the end of the day, it's kind of one of those things where, like, uh, even though we were moving in the right direction with with our careers and with our professional lives and our goals, we had the same north in that regard. In the social aspect, in the social realm, we were just way too disconnected, and that's what really caused the relationship to fail. And both of us still needed a little more work. You know what I mean? But we tried so many different times. I mean, I think, like, it just wasn't. I think sometimes you just got to realize that it's just not your person. It's not her, and it's not me. It's just it's you got any relationship is extremely intricate,
yeah.
and they all have their things. But that's why, for me, I mean, people are free to disagree, but, like, I grew up in a home where my parents gel 100%, and they have a business
Mm,
together. They work together 100% of the time. Like, they spend every minute of every day together, and they get along. They never, yeah, they have disagreements, but I've never seen my parents have, like, a fallout fight, where they're screaming and throwing stuff. That's never happened in my home. So the common theme in my mind, based on what I'm seeing with them, is that you have to be extremely compatible in order to have, like, a really loving, good relationship. Because here's the thing,
definitely.
you can
Mm,
there's we hear the stories a million times of couples that are together for 30, 40 years and are just miserable. So, like, yeah, you can, like, it's okay to fight for your marriage, but also, like, you don't want to spend 30 years with somebody you can't stand.
yeah.
Like, that's also not good. you know
I love that you explained that, because I think you actually answered my next question, which was, I was going to say, what did you notice about your parents' marriage that that you're implementing in your relationships, and you kind of highlighted it by saying, obviously, watching your parents be so gelled together, compatible, seemingly getting along, and just kind of, it just works in a sense,
yeah,
right? And then it can now make sense as to why maybe you and Carla necessarily it wasn't gelling. That if it's not gelling, it's not working, then it isn't necessarily your particular person as well. What is another lesson, if we can say, what is another lesson that you have taken from your parents' marriage that you are trying to implement in your next relationship or in your current
yeah.
relationship right now?
So, always having a good time. Like, my
Mm,
dad and my mom are always having fun, no matter how negative the situations are. Like, let's go out, let's have fun. I mean, like, um, you know, obviously, this is no secret that my match and I have had issues lately. Carla and I, and it's not been easy. Because the internet is very harsh. And but my girlfriend and I have just been, put that to the side. Let's go out and have a drink. Let's go dancing. Let's go to the bar. Let's go watch a blues concert. Let's get together with friends. And she's been a blessing to me while we navigate this, because anytime you're in the public eye and things like this happen, it's tough, man. It takes a toll on you mentally, emotionally, and I have a lot going on, man. I got all kinds of my work stuff going on, so it really takes a toll on you.
you said it takes a toll. What is the toll that it takes on you,
Just
Juan?
emotionally, because you're not trying to get people to pick sides. Like, I'm not trying to, like, it seems like there's two teams here, and I'm like, no, I don't want a team. I just want people to try to understand. You know, the only reason it takes an emotional toll is just for people to try to understand my perspective. I'm not asking anyone to pick my side or her side. Like, um, we all are very different people, and we all take different approaches. But
Mm.
it's just, that's it. I'm just trying to explain myself, and sometimes you get lost in the sauce of trying to explain yourself, because sometimes you say too much. And I'm learning. Like, my girlfriend's really good with that kind of stuff, and I'm just not. And I think sometimes I say too much, that I just lose myself in the sauce of trying to explain the way I feel.
Mm. Let's go. Let's go forwards, and then we'll come backwards. And again, because you
Yeah, yeah.
just mentioned something, I think it's very powerful, right? You said you wanted to explain yourself. What was why is it that it was important for you to explain yourself post a show? After Married at First Sight, kind of commences. Why was it important for you to share what you had experienced with Karla in terms of why you didn't choose Karla in the end?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of people. Here's the thing. There was 2 types of relationships on the show that we saw. Well, 3. We saw dysfunctional relationships, right? Like where it was just dysfunctional. We saw also dysfunctional relationships that led to what is it called? Cheating, right? That's the second type. And then we saw, we had 4 really. And then we saw another type of relationship was a good, healthy, proper relationship that grew into, moving to the next phase. And then we saw kind of a weird, neutral relationship where people were like, well, if these guys get along so well, why isn't it moving forward? So there was a lot of people out there that were like asking themselves, well, why couldn't these 2 people make it work if they're just getting along so well? So it's not like having like the need to explain yourself. It's like you have been, under wraps for over a year, just watching, waiting for this thing to come out. And then you're watching the show for 6 months, and you're listening and hearing and looking at the comments and everybody's talking. And sometimes it's hard to hear people bash you online. So you're like, okay, well, I'm going to try to like, in a politically correct way and in a respectful way, explain my perspective and my approach, and it backfired.
Would you say, I mean, and I think this is a normal human trait, right? Because I think a lot of us are not on reality TV. I know for a long of my times, I know you spoke about your abandonment issues. I have my rejection issues, obviously growing up in a particular household. And I know that doing YouTube for almost a decade now, one of the hardest things that I suffered with was having to explain myself. In fact, last year I interviewed someone and it went wrong.
Yeah.
And I spent the next day or 2 doing videos to try and explain myself. You know what I mean? Because I really wanted to, I'm a person that wants to be understood. I'm never trying to be harmful to anybody. I'm never trying to hurt anybody. And if I make a mistake, I will own up to it. But I also wanted to be understood. And I remember someone told me, stop explaining yourself. And I was like, no, but I have to, because like people need to know that I wasn't trying to and I felt like it was unfair, because obviously if I'm interviewing someone, I can't go at them, and they went at me, and I was thinking of all these things, but all it was like you said, like I really was trying to be understood in that space, because I don't like being misunderstood.
Yeah.
When you managed to get it all out, then did you feel like we understood you? Did you feel like the core people that maybe you were thinking that you were trying to at least get them to understand you understood you in the end?
So what I got out of that explanation, and I started realizing more and more, is that this is like a political thing. Like it's like literally it's like looking at the government. There's Democrats and there's Republicans, and there's independents, which I love them, because it's like they will go either way, and that's the way it should be, man. You should just go for whoever is the best option. Now here in this case, it's split right down the middle. There's people that like extremely agree with me and then extremely agree with Karla, which again, I don't want anybody to pick sides, but that's what this came to, So like what I notice is when I explain myself, the people that kind of like see my things from my perspective, like reached out to me, and like one lady was like, Juan, like, you don't have to be I'm a pretty smart person, but you don't have to be a PhD to understand like your point of view. Like, I agree, but if it's, if it helps you, like, yeah, I agree with your perspective. There's no secret why things didn't work out between you and Karla, that's it, So that's what I found out. That's what I found out was just like, no matter how much you explain yourself to somebody, you're going to have people on one side of the aisle and one side on the other. And you just have to come to means with that, to being okay with that. Yeah, some people agree with her, some people agree with me. And again, like, I'm not trying to get anybody to like not like Karla or not be on her team or whatever. That's not what this is about, because that's just immature. I'm not an immature guy. At least I'm immature for some things, but not for like these types of things. I just want to be heard. I want to be respected. I want my privacy to be respected. I think we all have the right to our privacy. So there's this thing called protection from unwarranted publicity. So that's basically your right to be free from having private matters disclosed or publicized without your consent. It's the law, so like whatever it is, if I have a micro penis or I mean, whatever it may be, it could be anything stupid, but at the end of the day, it's a right that we have, it's our right to our freedom of speech, and that was basically the whole thing for me. It was more of a principle thing. And yeah.
Okay. I get that. We're going to come back into that. So obviously, coming on to Married at First Sight, I mean, listen, we understand that Married at First Sight is a national TV show. And I know you put it even in your response that, people do think about going on the show, and there is a part of them which is, obviously, it's TV, there's exposure. Yeah. We understand that. Mm-hmm. Taking that part aside, what drove you to be on Married at First Sight? Because Juan, you are not a bad looking dude. Okay, you've modeled. You know what I'm saying to you. When that hair comes off, you're even more dangerous. So, what was the reason for you to go on this show?
So here's the deal. Like, when I decided to go on the show, I was 35 years old. I was very single. Like, I know there's a lot of speculation out there that I was in a relationship. I was not. I was extremely single. Had I been going on dates? Yeah, I've been going on dates for the past 2 years since my last relationship. You know what I mean? But I was single. The girl it's also important to talk about numbers, because there's a 0% chance to get on a reality TV show, and the castings go on forever. Like, we were casting from like April to like August. So it's like you're not, and also you have to keep everything confidential because you signed NDA saying that you're not going to disclose information. I mean, that's one of the most important aspects of it, is they're trying to protect the integrity of what's going to be aired, because if anything comes out, you're going to ruin the show, and then they're going to sue you. There's a clause in there. There's like $1 million clause in the suit in the contract. If you screw with the integrity of the show, they're gonna come after you. You don't fuck with the show, So anyways, I was very single, and I I'm extremely happy. Like, I'm blessed that it happened the way it happened, because I have the girl that I have now, But I'll say it. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Like, if I would have felt like my match was strong enough with the person that I was paired with, I would have said yes on decision day. And that's what people need to understand. Now, did I meet the person that I'm with now before? Yes, I did. I did meet her, but she lived in a whole different country, and I didn't think there was a possibility. I mean, we had discussed seeing each other again, but no plans were like set in stone. And then I told her about Married at First Sight, and I said, look, like, I'm doing this, and luckily, when it all came to an end, she was willing to give me a second chance, and it's so far it's been great, and I really do think it's gonna work out. Now, I went on the show because I said, why not? Like, I've done all this work on myself. I went through therapy. Like, I feel like I'm ready to give my partner like a healthy relationship, and I think for the 8 weeks that I was on the show, I did give her a healthy relationship, because what did she say on decision day? Do you remember?
She said it's one of the healthiest relationships she's ever been in.
There you go. So it was just, it didn't work out, but for me, it was a testament to me, like, getting done with that experience and treating her the way that I did, it was a testament that I'm ready. And with my relationship now, yeah, we butt heads. Like, we do have arguments, but they never escalate into anything ugly. And we know how to resolve the problems. We have healthy communication tactics. Like, I worked to become this type of partner, you know?
So obviously you brought to our attention. I don't, obviously some of the things I don't really know, but you brought to our attention obviously yourself and your current partner obviously had known each other before the show, but obviously it wasn't the
And
right
we,
time because she was in
so
another country.
yeah, let me also put this out there, because fans that love to grab onto air will grab onto air. I had only met her once for like a weekend. You know what I mean? So like, it's not like I had this like we had only met in person one time for a weekend, and it was a great weekend. We had a lot of fun, and we had a really great connection. But it wasn't like she was still in her country. I didn't know anything about her family. I didn't know about anything about her friends. There was a connection, but there wasn't like this huge long history that I'd known her for such a long time, and like, I know about her family. No, we didn't have like, I didn't know about her life in Brazil,
I mean, listen, I think that's fair. I mean, I understand you guys knew each other beforehand, and you obviously went on the show as well. I mean, some of my asks, was the communication cut before we went on to Married at First Sight, or was we still talking?
No, we cut the communication. I reached out to her a week before decision day, because at that point, you know what's going to happen. I mean, even I started seeing the writing on the wall like a few weeks. Like, I mean, it's an 8-week experiment. I think by the 4th or 5th week, you're kind of like, okay, well, there's just not enough substance here. And I'm not just the type of guy that's going to be like, oh, well, she's hot. I'm going to stay with her because she's hot, because that's going to take you nowhere. I mean, what really keeps you along, I mean, as you get older, you get ugly. I mean, you start sagging everywhere. You just get wrinkly. You lose your hair. I mean, you name it. Women, their breasts start sagging. I mean, it's normal. It's a part of living, is getting old, and just, like, that's it. You just become, like, your metabolism slows down. So you gotta, if you really want a successful relationship with someone, you gotta dig deep and uncover so many deeper things.
So going on to Married at First Sight, they ask you, what you want, and you end up with Karla. What was it that you were actually asking for? Because obviously, again, I know you addressed some of the rumors, but people would want to know, what were you actually asking for? Because it seems like Karla kind of fit that bill, but obviously not for you in terms of respect. So what did you actually ask the experts for?
From what I can recall, like, obviously I'm really into working out. So I asked for someone that was kind of like the same kind of like, like my girlfriend and I right now, we're always at the gym together. We go to the gym every day. After this, we're going to go to the gym, I wanted someone that was extremely driven, that was very stable, that loved to have fun, but it also had, a north of, focus. Yeah, I mean, those are the things, like I'm not into drug. I've never tried any drug besides marijuana. So I wanted someone that was also had that kind of, spirituality. I didn't really have, I didn't have a preference, but once I got to know, my match, I was like, okay, this is definitely never going to work for me. So now I know for sure. So in that aspect, my girlfriend and I are also very much alike. We're both, I believe in God, but it's not like I'm out here like, I'm not a Bible thumper either, like it's just very, very neutral, kind of like I pray within myself. I do have a strong relationship with God, but I believe that God is, it's kind of a dynamic thing, it's whatever you want it to be. There's so many different ways to believe, that's just my thought.
I get you. So for you, obviously, you asked for someone who was obviously into the fitness, someone who obviously, like I said,
extremely driven,
ambitious, because that was going to match what you were doing. And again, I guess that matches what your parents were bringing to the table. So in that space, you meet Karla. right? At the wedding day. I want to know your first initial thoughts because you're on the wedding day. You now get the reveal. What was your first initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my initial thoughts were that she's a cute girl, but she doesn't fit like the type that I would usually go for. You know, like some men like very slender women, and I don't. I like thicker women. So that was kind of my initial thought.
Would you
But
say you were
but again, you got to think about that. I didn't go into this like for the physical, like for the sole physical aspect. I wanted to go deep dive and like get the substance and figure out if you know, at that point I was like, okay, well, maybe it's not like the typical girl I go for, but let's dig deeper to see if there's anything there beyond that, you know?
So someone might. Let me not say someone might say. Let me say I said.
Yeah,
I think that person. Listen, attraction is a major thing. I
it
know
is. It is a major thing.
you know, we see it on Love Is Blind. We see it on Married at First Sight. We see it on major TV shows, especially when it comes to men. Physical attraction is a major thing. So for you, Carla came out. We know she's a pretty woman, but were you attracted at the beginning when you see her come out? And I know we can talk about. Oh, I want to see her emotional side of things.
I wasn't.
Were you attracted?
I wasn't attracted to her. No.
That's the part I want to start from. Okay. All right. Now, so in that space when you realized that you weren't attracted, what was your next steps after that in terms of your connection building with Carla?
Well, I thought at that point, well, I have to be realistic with myself. I have to make sure that I don't lead her in the wrong direction either, because I don't want to hurt her, you know? So that's why I was very careful about the physical aspect of our relationship, because I knew that if I let that happen, that, you know, it could end up really, really bad, you know, like I just didn't want to hurt her, you know? And, but I knew that I wanted to get to know her to see like if there was more to, if I could maybe fall in love in those 8 weeks with what she brought to the table, you know?
No, I respect that because obviously, like, you don't want to lead somebody on, and I think this is where it's a very difficult position to play.
Yeah, extremely, very difficult.
You don't want to lead someone on in the wrong way, but you're also trying to assess and see if there is some leeway that can be given, and see if you can go in that direction, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I get that. Okay, so obviously, Carla let us know in another interview that you know that there was a lie that was told. Now you don't have to say necessarily what the actual issue is because, of course, some things are private, so I'm not going to say that. But is that what she said? Is there credence to what she said in terms of that there was a lie that was told on that wedding day?
So I'll tell you this: my lawyer wrote a letter to the network, right? And I'm going to read a part of that letter, if that's okay with you. So basically, what it states in this one small section is a pretty lengthy letter. It says, while obviously these contracts are between the producer and the cast individually rather than between cast members, the protection they provide to contestant the protection they provide and the contestants' reliance on them could make the contestants intended third-party beneficiaries to the confidentiality provisions under New York law, which governs the contract. So basically, Juan and all the other contestants depend on the network for enforcing those provisions. The cast members may have a legal right to enforce those provisions directly in court against other cast members. So Juan has been satisfied with and appreciative of the protection of his confidential information so far. But he also wants to make sure that you're aware that keeping that information confidential is not only the right thing to do, but it also appears to be legal obligation under circumstances as I understand them. Juan's contract gives the production team significant discretion in permitting disclosure of certain content. Under New York law, however, the party with such discretion is subject to the so-called covenant of good faith and fair dealing, long recognized by New York courts. So this is a matter of like, when you get married to someone, it's no different than like having a contract with a therapist. You see what I'm saying? So like, let's assume this. Let's assume I go see a therapist, and during my sessions, I tell them deeply personal information about myself and private information. That's what you do with your therapist. And then I decide that I thought he didn't do a great job. So then I leave him a negative review online, stating that my experience wasn't that helpful. In response, he comes back feeling upset and defensive, and he hints to the publicly that they know my secrets. He says, even though they're ethically and legally bound to keep everything confidential, they say something like, "Oh, you're sharing my truth." Well, if only people knew the things that you told me, that would be like a breach of contract, and trust and professional ethics. So it's not just about the fact that something was shared. It's about leveraging private, protected information as a weapon to harm someone's reputation. On the show, we all sign a contract decided to protect us. And obviously, like I just read, under New York law, these contracts aren't just pieces of paper. They're binding agreements and intended to protect everyone involved: production, producers, other cast members. Like I've shared things with Alan. Alan has shared things with me that I would never share publicly. It doesn't mean there's a big secret. It's just like, that's the ethical thing to do, and beyond legalities, there's a matter of good faith. We all agree to respect each other's boundaries and personal experiences. So what's happening now is an attempt to twist that agreement into something retaliatory because I shared my perspective, which is my right, So what's happening here? It's a violation of good faith. It's an attempt to exploit my private information and a retaliation of my truth was on the show based on what they didn't want to hear. That's it. It's an attack on my integrity. And that's why I made it such a big deal, because it is. We all signed contracts that we would protect not only the network, but we would protect each other at the discretion of the network, and that's why this was such a big deal to me. Does that make sense? I mean, I don't know.
I get what you're saying. I know what you're saying in the sense of like there was, when she alludes to there being a secret, that means now we are going to now investigate, which is now causing the reputation aspect. Like now we start instigating, start saying things. I do get that aspect. Mm-hmm. So whilst I get that perspective, and again, we don't need to reveal it because again, it's your private aspect. On that wedding day, though, as she described, did the production ask you to say something to her in regards to what had happened, or whatever secret it was that happened? Because it seems to be that production, she's saying that production forced that. Is that true, or is this a lie that she told?
Listen, in life, what people need to understand, and in life, that nobody forces you to do anything you don't want to. Nobody forced her to do anything. Yes, production had a conversation with me the next day, and we all had a conversation, and we agreed to move forward, and but nobody forced anyone to do anything, like we agreed that we wanted to give that thing a shot. That was it. Yeah, nobody forced me, nobody forced her, so like.
So you came out of your own volition to tell her the information, because now she's already said it. She hasn't said what it was. She just said, obviously, this thing happened. So I'm trying to clarify to make sure that we know that this actual situation actually happened, or whether that she's telling her.
Well, I mean, it's no secret. Situation. It's no secret. Okay. The situation did happen. And listen, I'm not a bad person. Like I truly try to do good things, and I know Karla's not a bad person either. Even though this whole situation occurred, I'm disappointed that this even came out, because I never once have ever mentioned anything private about anybody's lives on this show. Not about production, not about other cast members. I kept it strictly to the information that I experienced on the show, So like when I saw that, I felt threatened, and I felt like, wow, like can't believe like this is actually happening, that they, like first of all, her sister, which was the one that made the inflammatory statement, wasn't even supposed to know about any of those of that situation, like like, again, I'll refer back to the contract that we all signed. You know, these contracts have, I work in construction. I sign contracts all the time. And sometimes contracts have the terms of, you know, paid when paid, if paid. So I'm signing that contract knowing that I may not get paid on that job. And if I don't get paid, I can't go on the internet blasting them because I signed the contract. I signed that. I agreed to those crappy payment terms. You see what I'm saying? So this is the same type of situation, you know?
I mean, I get that. I think obviously if I'm listening with, like, I get it, but I'm listening with objective ears,
Yeah, of
as if
course,
I'm listening to the interview as we're talking, right?
Yeah.
So, like, for instance, when someone might feel like you are shifting the goalpost, when, for instance, if I ask you and say, okay, is it a lie or were you pushed to tell her? Was it production? Or, and someone would be like, well, if you have to explain it round, then it feels like they're being how do I say this? They're being told a story rather than a yes or a no. You know what I mean? So, like, that situation, I know that you would have felt threatened. And we're gonna come there because I think that's a real thing we have to discuss. We have to discuss how you felt, and I think your feelings are very valid. I mean, if I've told someone a secret, it's not for, even if the person doesn't tell the secret. If the person alludes that there is a secret, they've already got me into a corner, right? So I definitely understand that. And I understand that, you know, that the family saying stuff would have definitely made you feel like you were trapped. And many people don't understand that. I think for us as men, if you're in that position, it doesn't feel the same for people. So I understand that too, right? But in respect to that, like I said, I want to make it very, very clear so that we understand as we're moving and progressing. So that wedding day, I don't know if it was after. I just want to make it clear so everyone knows where we're going. I don't know if it was on the wedding day or was it after, a few days after. There was meant to be a conversation. She said that the production forced you to have a conversation with her about something that was going to be important that she needed to know. So was this true what she said? Were you pushed by production? And we don't need to know what it is. Were you pushed by production? Or is this something that you took of your own volition to go and tell her? Because if that's the case, then it's a different story. You understand? We understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
Production doesn't force anyone to do anything. That's what we have to understand. We're all human beings, and we're willing and able to make decisions on our own. Production does not force anyone to do anything. They asked me, you know, they mentioned, like, hey, like, maybe you should talk to her about this. And I said, you know what? Yeah, let's have a conversation, you know, because she deserves to have all cards laid out on the table so she can make a decision, you know? Yeah.
Okay. So for you, it was mentioned to you, and then you decided on your own volition to go ahead and have a conversation.
We all have free. We live in a free country, and we have free will to make whatever decisions we want. Yes, sir.
Okay. So it wasn't forced. So because that's her position. Her position that is, she's seen it from her angle. It's forced. You're saying from your position, no, this was you taking your own volition and having a conversation.
Yeah. The producer made the suggestion, and I decided, you know, that's probably a good idea. So I did. I had the conversation with her.
Cool. All right. So obviously, you know, you guys had. It looks like I don't want to say that the first few days seemed like it was going well. Like when to the honeymoon, it looked like it might have been going somewhere. I want to know your thoughts in those early few days. You know, before we get to any of the honeymoon incidents that started. You know, it seemed like there was a connection starting to build, at least from our perspective. I guess where they edited that way.
I mean,
what was your perspective on that?
Yeah, my perspective is that KARLA's pretty cool, you know. So it's like I mean, it was an obvious friendship connection for me, you know. And throughout the whole honeymoon, I never was like, I was trying to figure out if there was more to, like, if there was any chemistry, but I just, you know, guys, think about it. I've at this point, I've known her like 3 or 4 days, you know, so I'm just like trying to figure out, like, how do I do this? You know, how do I go about this? Because this is a situation I've never been in, and we got to figure out, like, you know, even though there's not chemistry, like, you know, real romantic chemistry, maybe we can figure out how to get to know each other, and that will grow with a little bit of time. That's what you're thinking. It's like, all right, how do I do this? How do I do this and make sure that, that we don't hurt each other, that I'm not hurting her feelings, and I'm not out here like bashing her, because that wasn't my intent either. I was like, okay, well, I want to try to do this, and let's see how we can do this. That was going through my head.
I hear that. That's a difficult place to be in. When
Yeah.
the attraction is not necessarily there, but you having to try and see how we can best work the situation. And see if we can grow and see what we can develop. Was it when? And I'm gonna go forward and come back again. When was the first conversation you guys had about how you actually felt then? So, because obviously, if you weren't feeling her on that attraction level, it becomes very difficult to really be able to give the romantic aspect. So, when did you make her aware that, you know what, I'm seeing you as a friend. I'm not really seeing you as a no.
I mean, I think when we came back from the honeymoon and we started seeing the experts, like the experts are asking you. I think it was a conversation with Dr. Pia that was like, well, why don't you see? People are like, well, why can't he hold her hand? It's like those little things are very intimate for me. And then I'm leading someone in the wrong direction. And yes, on the honeymoon, I was trying to do those things to see if it felt natural, and it just didn't, And I was always very kind, but very honest. I never said one time like, oh yeah, I'm very attracted to Karla. Like I said, yeah, Karla, I think is great to hang out with. We have a lot of fun together. We live, living arrangements are good. It's easy. We don't have confrontation. We don't fight. We're good friends. But I was just very kind about it.
Obviously, on the honey, and I do remember that conversation with Dr. P. Actually, I did a whole video about it, so I remember that conversation you guys actually had about that. On the honeymoon, obviously, you guys go to, you had the photo shoot situation. You have the, the situation where you said you kind of forgot about her as well, which obviously we discussed on the reunion. Yeah. I want to know, because obviously she also made a claim that, this conversation about, you said basically, that you weren't going to spend the money like the rest of the guys, and
that's true. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not. It's true.
Why did that statement come? I mean, I know why, but I want just to make it clear for people. Why did that statement come out of your mouth to say like you're not going to spend the money like the guys in that particular aspect?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like for me, it was, with all due respect to the gentlemen on the show that were my castmates, because I'm not trying to like put them down or anything, but it was theatrical. Like, we just met these people. Why are you going to go spend $300 or $400 on a massage when, and then you see how it turned out. You know what I'm saying? None of it worked. Like, like it was like, I just didn't get it. I didn't understand it. Like, let's get to know each other first. Like, when, for example, when I've been single, my first date with any woman is never out to dinner. Because I'm not going to go out and spend $200 or $300. There's women that actually take advantage of men, that like they just go on Bumble and Tinder dates just to get guys to get them to take them to dinner. My first date with a woman is always coffee. I will spend $4, $5, $6 on someone to figure out if there's a deeper connection. Now, if there's a really deep connection, then I'll go above and beyond. Like for my girlfriend's birthday, I took her to Sushi by Boo here in Chicago. It's an omakase experience. Have you ever had omakase?
No.
So omakase, it's like chef's choice at a sushi spot, but it usually runs from like anywhere from $300 to $500 for the dinner for two. I am more than willing to do that. Like when my girlfriend and I now we go on vacations, like I'll spend $5,000-$6,000 on a vacation. But with somebody that I just met, I don't even know anything about this person. Yeah, I'm not going to do it. That's just
I get it. I get it. You don't know the person. Also, there's not really that the investment, because you're also not necessarily attracted to her. So there is no input. There's no impetus, no motivation to want to be able to do these things. Especially again, you don't want to send the wrong signal.
But listen, even if I would have been physically attracted to her, I wouldn't have done it. Because then I don't even know if I'm emotionally or mentally attracted to her. You see, because I'm not one dimensional. What I like about my girlfriend now is that she brings a lot of different things to the table. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I love about her. She is extremely driven, extremely hardworking. She is working on multiple things. She owns 2 properties in Brazil. She has, she has a salon with employees that hold it down while she's visiting me. You know, she helps me while she's here with everything. You know, like this woman is on top of her game 110% of the time. It's not just about me being into her body. It's like all those things that come with the package, you know? So even if I would have been like, you know, drop dead into her, I wouldn't have done it because I still don't know this person, you know, mentally and emotionally. And that was important for me.
I get it. Okay, I get it. You weren't necessarily invested like that. Okay, cool. Yeah. I get it. You have to take your time and get to know the person as well.
Exactly.
So talk to me about this situation that obviously where you said you forgot about her because that obviously turned into a little bit of a situation.
Yeah.
What was going on that day that you end up in a position where you end up forgetting about her?
So, as you can tell, I'm not very great with like I've written some responses down just because I want to make sure that I say the right thing. Just because I have a hard time expressing myself when it comes to these things, and you know sometimes it's just hard finding the words, you know, to say. It just comes out wrong, and I say too much. But in this situation, there's one of those cases that I just like I misexpressed myself. Like my point was because she told me that she had a lot of fun out there and it was good to just get away from everything. And Karla was in her own little world over there, like floating in the water. And I was also in my own little world doing backflips and like, you know, I was doing backflips off the boat and front flips. So I was just more like saying like, look, I was kind of doing the same thing as you. There's been so much drama on this honeymoon that it was just good to be out there and just having a good time. I was in my own little headspace, just like you were, you know? So it came out like, oh, I forgot about you. It wasn't that. It was just like, I had no thoughts in my head at that time. I was just wanting to have a good time, have drinks. I mean, it was kind of like the first time that everybody let go of all the BS and had a little bit of fun, you know?
So then obviously as you're having a conversation at dinner, that slips out.
Yeah. And now that was like, I mean, I mean, from the sounds of it, she's kind of still hanging on to that comment. But I apologize.
What was her reaction at the time when you said that? Because obviously,
I could tell in that moment. I could tell she was pissed. She was like, because you know, Karla has facial reactions that you can't misinterpret them for sure.
You then obviously had conversations around that because obviously then later on, I guess because of the swimming pool situation, which she cleared up, she said obviously because she was on a period as well, so you know she was having a hard time at that. And she did praise you by saying that you were actually considerate of her as well and understood as well.
Yeah.
But then you mentioned this passive aggressive stuff, and we saw on the show actually that you guys actually spoke on the bed about this passive aggressive stuff.
Yeah.
What was that conversation like? From obviously it was edited again, so what was that actual conversation like, and why did you feel like you needed to address the passive aggressive comments?
Well, the thing about Karla is that, you know, as cool as she is, like, I mean, here's the thing: everybody has moments, you know. So I get it, but Karla is I think she's very sensitive. You know, I would say that, and it's when you're in a situation like that, it's so tough because the person's not getting what they want out of the situation. It's hard, man, and like I know that I triggered her a lot, and someday she would come in, and I was like, I don't even know what to do here because I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. You know, she's clearly upset about something. So a lot of times instead of telling me, you know, she would just have that kind of, that kind of reaction. You know, just like talk to me, just tell me what's going on, you know. And unfortunately, there were so many other times that, you know, there were things going on that I just couldn't meet her in the middle with, you know. Just, you know, that's it.
Now, obviously, you addressed that she was passive aggressive. Would you say that also? Would you also agree that maybe you also carry some passive aggressiveness when you are dealing with certain situations? Because from what we saw on the show, we didn't get to always see your communication.
So. Yeah, I mean, I would say that I could be passive aggressive. I think here's the thing: like, I get mad and I just like let it go, and then it's out, and then I'm, you know, with my girlfriend. That's what we talk about all the time. Like, for me, it's like I get angry, I say what I need to say, and then it's like nothing ever happened, you know. But I think it's a thing with women that things just linger for longer, you know. Like when women get into a fight, they're just enemies forever. If men get into a fight, we beat the shit out of each other, and then we're good. You know, we're best friends after that. You know, let's go have a beer, man. I just bloody lip, missing tooth, and we're drinking beers.
I get that. Yeah, and actually have seen that. I've seen them get into a fight and
right.
then actually get back on it.
And
so,
then they're good, totally good afterwards.
Good. So okay, so that then leads us to a place where, you know, if that is the case, you know, and we're looking at you know, this relationship, because after the honeymoon you come back and you said obviously now, you know, we're having that conversation where it's like, okay, you know, where do we actually stand, right? You're having those conversations with experts and stuff, right? There are obviously quite a few issues that you listed in regards to what made you not want to choose Karla. So I want us to get a bit more understanding of where you're coming from, so we understand where your perspective is. The household aspects.
Yeah.
Right? The household aspects. You know, you said obviously you were cooking like 70% and cleaning like 70% at the time. What's happening in a household that is prompting this particular viewpoint for you, right? And saying that you were doing majority of the cleaning and the cooking. And what conversations did you have with Karla in regards to what you were expecting from her in regards to the household chores?
Yeah. So basically, like before I go into this, I'm gonna talk a little bit of statistics again, because it's important to understand statistically the nature of our relationship at this point, right? So I'm 38 years old, right? We were on the show for 8 weeks, 8 total weeks. At 38 years old, I have lived 1,981.32 weeks so far. So when you take 8, then you divide it by 1,981 weeks that I've been alive, I've known Karla for 0.004% of my life thus far, right? So if you round to the nearest whole number, how long have I known her? 0% of my life, right? So why is that important to say? Because I want anyone that's watching to understand that I'm not talking about Karla, who she is now or before the show. I'm only talking about what I experienced during those 8 weeks, you know. Whenever, you know, at the house, like most of the domesticated things I was doing, and I'm not just saying this. This is, you know, this is happening on the show, you know, like, so I did a little exercise of, I asked ChatGPT to pull from like articles on the internet. So like, you know, Monsters and Critics, what's the other one? Screen Rant, to pull from there. And I asked them the things that I put in that statement that you read. I asked them like the questions and then what episode was it in. So this is from episode 6. This is not me saying it. This is from an article that we found on the internet that ChatGPT found. It says, Karla struggles to operate a gas stove when trying to burn sage in their apartment. Juan is shown as more domesticated, handling cleaning tasks. I didn't say that. That's not coming from me. This was published by an article. So it was a thing, you know, like I remember during that episode, I watched it over and she's like, oh, well, how do you turn this thing on? And I'm like, oh my God, you don't know how to turn on a gas oven? And I'm not trying to talk junk about her. It just was surprising to me. And those were the things that, like, maybe I didn't make them a big deal, which, like, I don't regret the way that I reacted about things.
How did you react to that?
That's the thing. I was very passive about those things. I didn't want to make them a big deal because, you know, a lot of people, for example, judged Madison for asking, you know, they lit her up for asking Alan to change. So like for me, I went on there and I wasn't trying to change someone. I was trying to like figure out if what the experts saw in this person that carry over to what I'm looking for in a wife, you know? So those little things I was just observing, and some of them I made them more of a big deal than others, but this was one of those little things that I was like, okay, well, I noticed this and I did mention it. It's just that I didn't make a big deal out of it, you know?
Why? I know you said obviously you're being more passive, right? But why is it that you didn't mention that? Because obviously that is a big thing for you, right?
Yeah.
Like
I
that's
did
a
mention it.
massive.
I was
Okay.
very surprised. Just didn't beat it up, you know? I didn't beat that subject up, you know, like I was, you know, and also like maybe it was a mistake. I should have been more, you know, because like it is very important for me to do 50-50. Like here in my apartment when my girlfriend is here, like we both, you know, we both are
Contribute
working
towards the
together. Yeah,
household.
yeah. Like the other day she started sweeping and I was sitting here working and I was like, oh shoot, she's sweeping. So I went and cleaned the bathroom. You know, because I'm that type of person. I want us to both, it's like a team when you're with someone.
I hear
You're a
you.
team. You're a team. You know, this is like, especially in the 21st century, like women work, men work. We both are, you know, things are expensive. Like
Mm.
both
I get
working
this.
toward a common goal. Yeah.
And I mean, I totally get it. I understand. You're looking for a teamwork basis, and that's
Hmm.
not what you received from your perspective. You didn't receive that from
Yeah,
Carla. So
exactly.
but there was no real. So my thing is, there wasn't much of a conversation because you about the expectation though. So she wouldn't have
Mhm.
known. I mean, listen, hey, we can all be a bit more self-aware. I'm not gonna lie to you, but
Mhm.
she wouldn't have known verbally that that was an issue because one of the things that she actually also said on her interview, which I understand as well, is
Yeah.
that some of the things that you may have felt were said in the confessionals, but not necessarily said to her, which is the
Mhm.
chore one's probably one of those things that wasn't necessarily said to her. Would that be
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. I mean, again, you know, you're right. I'm not going to argue with you because you're probably right. I should have been more verbal about it. I thought that I hinted at the fact that, you know, that this wasn't like ideal for me, you
Mm,
know, and it's one of those things about self awareness, you know, like,
mm,
and in fact, that's one of the things I love about my girlfriend now is she's extremely self aware, you know.
mm. Okay. Obviously, finances was a big issue for you guys. Big issue.
Mhm.
I want to know from your perspective, what was laid out at the very beginning when you guys, because obviously we saw her come to meet your parents. They discussed obviously about what they were expecting because they know you. Um, but I want to know what was laid out in terms of conversation between you and Carla. What was the initial expectation financially? Because I know what we're hearing now, but what was an initial conversation and or conversations around finances and how it's going to play
Yeah.
out?
Well, you know, it was it was like, I was in a transition period and I was trying to get, you know, my business with Tyler to go to the next level. And listen, unfortunately, when you're growing a business, you have, especially in construction. So a lot of the way construction projects work is that we're subcontractors. You know, we work through a general contractor that works through an owner. So when you get the contract, you have to start working on the job. That means you have to start doing all the submittals. So like drawing, engineering, like product data submittals, and that costs money. You got to pay an engineer to draw and design the job, right? Then after that, the job gets approved. It goes into production, and then every month you submit a pay application for you to get paid. So you apply for payment. So what people need to understand is like, let's say you book a $200,000 or $300,000 job. Usually, a job like that for a subcontractor has anywhere from 20 to 10% margin. That means that the rest of it is cost. So think about it: 80 to 85, 80 to 90% of that job, a two or $300,000 job, it's your responsibility as a subcontractor to front that, to finance that job. I was doing that during the show, you know? So you're having to foot the bill for 150, $100,000, 40, $50,000. And that means that it's just a sacrifice you make. Like everybody thinks that starting a business is just like register an LLC and then, oh, we're in business, we're selling products. No, everything has a cost. associated with it. And when you book a $300,000 or $400,000 job and you're a new business, because this was like a new venture between my business partner and I, him and I are both having to finance these projects, you know, and a lot of it was with our cash flow. And then you're seeing that money, one, two, because those jobs are either paid when paid, and a lot of the times they go 30 to 90 days. So like during the show, I had a job where the customer owed us $100,000, and that got paid 90 days after, you know? So that was for me, yeah, like it is a big deal. Finances are a big deal because I'm trying to do this right here. I need a teammate that's going to help me grow and make good financial decisions. I'm not looking for anybody to take care of me. Believe me, I don't need that. But at the same time, we're looking for people that are understanding to that are cognizant of what it takes to be a subcontractor in construction. And I'm not just saying this. You can have a conversation with any sub. They'll tell you it's not easy, you know? So that's kind of what it all stemmed from, you know?
So in a sense, what I got from what you just said is that you're saying that you have a large, you happen to fund a large cash flow, which means that this is going to be, it's not going to be a case of that you're going to have a lot of large cash freely at hand because you are pumping that money right back into the business to try and be able to achieve the goals that you have for the business in this time. So you're not going to have like loads of cash just lying around, like disposable cash. Not
especially not initially, because at that point it was a very transition period for me and Tyler. We were just like getting into it, you know. Now once you get going and you start, you know, these jobs start to pay out and you start building cash flow and you start building a reserve, and then you're getting bigger lines of credit with suppliers, then it's easier. Then you see, you know, that's like, then you see the benefit, like the what is it called? You reap of what you sow, you know. But initially it's tough, and people think like starting a business is just like, oh yeah, you know, we're just gonna like start selling lollipops, and all of a sudden we're just have this like multi-million-dollar lollipop company. But again, we go back to like the wealth of most, you know, the wealth is really concentrated in a small amount of people globally. You know, like 1% of the wealth of the world, or like 99% of the wealth of the world is concentrated in the top 1%. For a reason, because not everybody's willing to go the extra mile and dig deep and spend the money to become successful, because you got to pay to play, man. That's the name of the game, you know. Like, I mean, you don't just have a venture. Like, believe me, with the app, I try to figure out like where getting a venture capitalist is not easy. Getting somebody to give you a couple $1 million is
it's not easy.
Try it. Yeah. I challenge any of your viewers to go and try to get funded.
It's not easy.
They will probably fail miserably. There's a 99% chance they're going to, you know?
No, I get that. Listen, and I understand the fact that you took a risk and decided to do it. We understand it's not easy to do. So in regards to, obviously, like, because I understand the business side, I studied business studies for a degree, so that's my thing. But in regards to the communication with, in regards to the conversation with Karla, was she made, so because obviously, you know, she had her plan, which was that she cleared it up that she said obviously that she understood that, but she was saying that once she had a kid, she was potentially looking to be a stay-at-home mom in a sense, right?
And that would be a problem, yeah.
Okay.
Well, go ahead.
So I'm sorry. What kind of conversations you guys had? So around, just so that we can clear it up, around the financial aspect, what was the direct conversations you guys actually had?
In that regard, I mean, I think that, you know, I wouldn't have had a problem with that. You know, I understand that, you know, whenever you have a child, like there comes a responsibility with that. And it's like, you know, it was so hard to have those types of conversations about things like that though, because we couldn't even get past the chemistry part. So it's like, it's tough to like just go into a conversation like that, you know, like, you know, Karla was going through a transition period as well. It was just tough for me to handle that transition period, because I mean, for the sake of the 8 weeks that, you know, one of the things I was looking for, stability, you know, drive, like, so for the purpose of the 8 weeks, you know, maybe right now Karla's like flourishing and booming, but for the purpose of the 8 weeks, I was a little bit worried, and I was very verbal about that to her
Okay.
and behind the cameras too.
Okay. So I'm going to come in a second. So I want to link
Yeah.
it. So for you, in regards to the financial setup, you didn't really have the conversation, you two. And I'm not just putting it on you, I'm putting it on both of you because, of course,
Yeah.
again, it takes two to tango. But there wasn't much of a conversation in terms of financial setup outside of what we saw on the show, which is that your dad saying something. There wasn't much of a conversation in terms of how this could play out and how it can look because of the fact that there was chemistry issues already.
Well, yeah, we were trying to figure out where there was a connection in order to like take the next step, you know?
Okay.
So that was more important. That was a priority over having, like, you know, it's like you can't skip, you know, steps A, B, and C to get to D. You know, that's pretty, like, for example, those were things that Camille and Thomas were talking about in like the last few episodes, because they were, but it took them a long time to get there, you know, but they got there and they finally started talking about these things because it was the time to talk about them. But before that, they didn't talk about them because it's like they were just trying to figure out if Thomas had enough swag. You know what I mean?
I understand. No, it's a fair point. I can't lie to you. It's a fair point because we did hear that the difficulties that were at that point in time, you know, they didn't discuss finances until much later. And
Yeah.
we are going to look at it more critically because obviously we know the situation between you and Carla is very different to Thomas and Camille, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I do take that into consideration as well.
Yeah. They got there, we didn't. Yeah.
Exactly. Now there was a conversation about obviously the $12 smoothies. I want to understand because I want to keep a bit more time to explain that too, right? Because unfortunately, you know, this conversation is going to be edited in a way, so people are going to naturally have a disposition on this straight away, right?
Yeah.
You know, as a man, you can't have if you don't have enough finances, they're going to call you broke. So, I want to know your perspective. Why did that conversation come up, and what was actually your point about that situation? Because at that point, it was about a $12 smoothie. You know, she's saying that, you know, she didn't ask you to pay for it. She wasn't expecting you to pay for it. Were you expecting to pay for it? Maybe because again, as men, sometimes we do take on that thought process that, you know, we want to provide, we want to pay for stuff. So sometimes we do feel like we're going to take on certain things so that we may reject it. So I want to know from your position, what was that conversation stemming from? Why was that a conversation around that particular aspect?
Yeah. I would say that, you know, I said it part jokingly, you know, but at the same time there was some because I like to joke about I like to joke a lot, you know. I would say it was part joke, but at the same time it was kind of like, you know, like those little decisions, like if you go to a financial advisor, those little decisions add up. I mean, when you take that, you know, I think being conscientious about how you're spending your money is important. It's okay to go on a vacation and splurge here and there, but it's also important to understand that, like, there's got to be some sort of strategy, you know, like you can't spend more than what's coming into the bank, you know, and I think that's kind of what it stemmed from. Like, hey, we need to, if this is gonna work, we got to make, as a team, we got to make good financial decisions, because if we want to buy a house, if we want to invest into real estate, if you have to give some things up in order to get others. Again, like anyone that wants to, which they're free to do so, but challenge that. We go back to the numbers thing. You know, why do most people, you know, why are like 200,000 plus earners in such a low percentage? Because most people aren't willing to make those sacrifices. Like, those are just statistics. Like, you know, a large part of the population of the U.S. is living paycheck to paycheck for a reason, you know, or the things that they do have are all on credit. Like, I own my car. It's been paid for since I bought it. You know, I paid my college loans. I don't know a dime for my college loans. I didn't take one loan to start FlightMate. You know, are my credit cards right now, are they maxed? Yeah, because I'm leveraging them to push my projects through. So you're constantly like paying one thing off the credit card, and then you feeding the credit card when you get a paycheck, you know? So like you're leveraging your credit cards, you're leveraging your line of credits with suppliers, you know? But at the end of the day, like, as far as like that I owe anybody anything. I don't owe nobody nothing. There aren't any loans out there. I don't owe, like, I have a bachelor's in accounting. It's paid for. I paid for it like 2 years after I got out of school. So that's what I'm talking about. I wanted somebody that had that mindset of, okay, let's work as a team to build wealth together, to make smart financial decisions, and to give our children generational wealth, especially as minorities. That's extremely important because we don't do that. It's so much easier to build off of what your parents have already built than to go out there and try to reinvent the wheel like I'm doing. I came here with nothing. I'm building off of, I started building everything that I'm doing now. I started building it on literally a moving target. I didn't have no foundation. I started brick by brick, man,
No, I actually do see your perspective here, right? Because I've got myself, I also want to build generational wealth as well, and I know it takes a level of sacrifice, saving. It requires you to cut back on certain things. You can't go everywhere. You can't do everything, and you may look like a little bit of a Grinch for a little while because you are trying to make sure that you are appropriately delegating your funds in the right way, right? You want to make sure. And of course, you're running a business as well, and that's requiring a lot of leverage, financial cash flow as well. So you're trying to be smart about the way that you move it in that aspect. In that instance, then, would you say that, well, I've got two things here. Number one,
yeah, go ahead.
I actually understood what you're saying. Like, from a business perspective, I'm really understanding what you're saying. And if you was a mentor, I'll be on it. I can't lie to you because you understand business on a deep level where you can explain it and you can teach it. But I also will say I can see from another perspective, somebody isn't necessarily a business person.
Yeah, of course.
Someone isn't a business person, right? How, and this also happens to me as well. As somebody who does relationships, who coaches people, when I get into relationships with people, one thing that people can accuse me of sometimes is that trying to have all the answers in a relationship about a relationship can sometimes make you feel like the other person is not being considered, like in a sense, so almost like you may come off a little bit more arrogant than anything, right? Because you're almost trying to tell them what to do, not necessarily telling, like, you're forcing them, but in a sense of you're almost trying to coach them when they haven't asked to be coached. So it can look a bit like you're being arrogant. I don't think necessarily you are, but I'm saying I can see how that can come across.
I could come across that way, I think. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you.
Okay. I respect that you can take that in board. My second thing, obviously, with that is this situation, obviously, with KARLA. Then, what was the importance of then trying to help, or even say have conversations around finances, if you felt like you couldn't progress that relationship and you felt like, there's the chemistry is not there, because that's what you were saying in the sense of why you couldn't have a certain conversation. So why did certain financial conversations come up and some other aspects not come up?
Well, the first question about the finances was like, how did it look like in the future with like kids? So that never came up, because how can you even talk about kids when we ain't even doing the thing? You know what I'm saying? The second question was about the finances of like how the strategy was going to be if it moved forward from that point forward. So we did like let's say like we did think about like the 1 or the 2 year plan, but we didn't think about the 5 or 10 year plan, because I mean, listen, even though it's a relationship, people forget that when you go get married, you sign a contract, I mean, you do it's a civil case, so in a sense, like, and I took a class when I was in college. It's called marriage. It was called Psychology of Marriage and Family. And it said statistically that couples that sign marriage contracts are actually are statistically more, they have higher success rates. And those marriage contracts can have anything in them, like, who's going to clean what, how often they're going to do it. I mean, they can get very detailed, or they can just talk about financial things. But at the end of the day, they just, you hash a lot of things out that you don't have to hash like on the fly, so those things are like they are important to talk about. But again, it's not like a business transaction that you're making with your wife, but you talk about them. But again, it's also good to have like, long-term goals and then short-term goals. So for us, we were just talking about the short-term things. Like, do I expect, I knew that Carla's been around for 30 something years, like I didn't expect her to not be able to fend for herself, I just want to make sure that she made smart financial decisions, that we were on the same boat.
Okay. Another issue came up.
Yeah.
Stability.
Mm-hmm.
I got two questions again. Number one, would you consider yourself stable? Because I know from a business perspective, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But from a relational standpoint, would you then consider yourself stable, knowing that you are not able to be in your quote unquote fullest capacity because you got to plow everything back in the business and everything like that as well?
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself stable at that point?
So I would consider myself stable. Like right now, obviously my girlfriend's got her business back in Brazil, and one of her apartments is rented, and the other one's an Airbnb. But when she's here, she spends months at a time here. I provide for everything. I'm the provider for this household. Like whatever she needs, I take care of it. Obviously, little things like that she does on, she wants to buy clothes or something, she'll do that on her own. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know what I can do financially for a woman. Again, I'm not going to go out there and buy a $20,000 like Saint Laurent dress, because those are far and few between people that have the money to make those kinds of expense purchases. But I mean, dinners, anything that we do, she doesn't pay for anything.
I respect that. And then obviously the situation with Karla, she obviously quit her job. Now,
Mm-hmm.
This is the one part where I saw that you answered this before,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, wait, hold on, Juan didn't share this part of the situation. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So I want to understand something. Karla said she told you before she actually quit the job. So it wasn't just a case of just she came back and quit the job. She told you that she quit the job.
Yeah. No, again, this is one of those things where it's like he said, she said. The way that I recall it, she told me right before we were going to start filming that day that she quit her job, and then when she started going in, like when we started filming, she said, I quit my job. And then these are verbatim what she said. I quit my job. And then there was something I said in between. And then she said, well, it was a mutual agreement. I can't be managed. She said that on the show. And yeah, I was a little bit like, okay, well, again, like I didn't come on the show to change somebody. She made these decisions on the show, and I didn't show approval. Like if you look at the footage, I start backing up in the in the warehouse. We were in the warehouse, and I start backing up because I'm like, so what's going on now? And then we were filming at the park for our first month anniversary, and I jokingly was like so like now you're gonna have all this time. She was like, oh, I love having my coffee in the morning. And I was like, yeah, you're going to have a lot of coffee because we have a lot of time. You ain't got no job. And I just took a different approach from my cast members, in the way that they express themselves. Like, that's just not, maybe that's one of my weaknesses, that I need to learn to be more direct with people, to tell them when that's why, like, I wouldn't even consider myself a great manager, like we do a lot of field operations with our business, and we have an installation sub that manages that aspect of it, because I can't be out there like telling people, like, because I'm too nice, and I'm not gonna, oh, you messed that up. No, this guy's telling them what to do. He runs the show out there. I'm not that guy. That's not my strength. So in this situation, unfortunately, like I was just way too nice. I should have been a little bit more, stern. But I did question her. I questioned her. I said, what's the plan? You got this job in New York. What's the rate? When you flying out, you got tickets. They paying for the hotel. Like all those things are important when you book a job.
Mm-hmm. For you, what were the feelings that you were having? Because clearly there are some feelings that are going on when she quits the job, right? There are some feelings that you actually have.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can let us into your world a little bit and into your mind a little bit as well. The feelings that you were having at that point when she quit her job, whether she told you before or not, doesn't make a difference. But
Yeah.
how did you feel in those moments? What were some of the feelings that
Well,
were coming up for you?
yeah. Well, I was like, well, shit, like I work from home. So now it's going to be two of us at the house. And what is this going to look like now? So that's what those were my feelings, kind of trying to figure out what this was going to look like. Cause now it's going to be both of us at the house all day.
Okay. So you were thinking about the fact that she would have to be at home, both be at home in the same space.
Yeah, like that's a lot of time to share with someone. So like that's something to think about. Like how is our dynamic gonna change now that we're just both gonna be here all day? Which I don't just stay at the house, but I go and see customers and stuff. But you do spend a lot of time at the house, like putting out quotes and bids and doing like just paperwork and stuff. So that's what I was going through my head.
Okay, so underneath that, if you can work with me a little bit here, underneath that, what's really working underneath that? You get what I'm saying to you? What's really working underneath that?
What do
Because
you want?
obviously, because you're saying obviously that should have been at home.
Huh? I'm saying
You
what?
said obviously should be at home more, right?
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Because I get it. You should be
So
at home
yeah.
more.
For
What
me,
does
it's
that
like, well,
mean?
now this dynamic changes the way that we operate, and it's going to be interesting. Like, what are we going to keep getting along well? Are we, what kind of person is she going to be? Like, how is that going to affect our relationship?
Okay, so you're having a thought process around, because I want people to understand where you're coming from. Like,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you're saying you were having a thought process in the space that you felt like in that moment, or not in that moment, but if she's gonna be coming home, she's gonna be more at home. You're gonna have to spend a little bit more time together. Is that what we're
yeah,
really saying, Juan?
yeah.
'Cause I think that's what I want you to get to. Really and truly, it sounds like you gonna be at home, I'm gonna be at home, and we're already not having this love affair right now. So it means more time we have to spend together. Is because
How is that
I
going
think
to
that's a
play
real
out?
thought.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it
I
wasn't
was gonna
bad
say, yeah.
actually. Like, it wasn't. It didn't really affect us in a negative or positive way, to be honest. It
Mm.
was a neutral change.
Mm. So did it after that then? So you guys built a friendship. Again, you told us earlier on that you guys already had a conversation with the experts. When is it ratified that this is categorically now become a friendship? This is nothing more.
I think what put the stamp on it for me were two things, um, and I'll say this now. Let me preface this what I'm about to say with because I mentioned this in one of my last interviews, but the only reason I'm mentioning this is because Karla already addressed this on her Instagram. So Karla, she talked about, and I have actually a screenshot of this where she put this. I don't know if you guys know that she was on. It was like a thing on her Instagram where she was answering questions, and somebody said,
Okay.
"Don't take this personal, but do you eat edibles? Do you smoke weed every day?" And she
Okay.
reminded her response was, "I don't think this asking if I smoke is offensive. I do not take edibles. I smoke straight ganja hybrid." And then she says, "Currently, I'm on a tolerance break, but yes, every day."
Mm.
So I knew that Karla was smoking every day, obviously, and it got to the point where like she was smoking in the apartment a little bit, which
Mm.
it bothered me, but I never talked about it. The only reason I'm talking about it is because she publicly released that information. So I feel comfortable talking about it because
I
she
hear.
publicly released it. Now
Yeah.
I would have never even mentioned it because I think that's one of those things that it's not fair to throw somebody under the bus like that, But since she mentioned it, that was something that bothered me, because
Mm.
I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm a saint. But again, I go back to I've never tried any other drug besides weed. And like, for example, right now, even though it's legal here, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with anyone that smokes weed. Like my business partner, Tyler, he smokes, 5 blunts a day. But I'm just not that type of guy. Like if I took a drug test right now, it would come back clean because I can't remember the last time I smoked weed.
Okay.
So that's just not, that was like a big deal breaker for me. you know. And I did say that
it wasn't
to her.
a big deal breaker,
It
or
was. It was. Yeah, it was. And I did mention that to her. And I think initially when we got back from the honeymoon, and these were just very private conversations. And again, the only reason I'm talking about it is because she did mention that she smokes every day, and that's the only reason I'm talking about it. Just to be clear, because I know people are going to come on here and try to twist
I get it.
words, you know, and I just want to make sure that it's very clear that the only reason I'm talking about this is because she mentioned it. And that really bothered. And she tried to quit I think she like stopped smoking at the beginning when we first got back because I did mention it to her, but then I think she was just stressed out with the whole situation with her and I, so she's just stopped giving a fuck, you know. And I don't blame her for that, you know. I get it. Like, she was frustrated. She was not getting what she wanted, you know. And then the other thing was like, I think for me, like the spirituality, we just did not connect. It was a lot for me. I'm not gonna lie to you. And then again, I mentioned this on the show, you know. I did mention it. I mentioned it during our decision day. It just doesn't, we didn't align, you know. But I think that's what put the final stamp on it, you know. Again, I've known Karla for 8 weeks of my life so far, so I'm not judging her for now and I'm not judging her for then either. I hope that people understand is that I'm not judging Karla. I'm not trying to judge her. You're asking me about
your perspective. Yeah.
That's all I'm talking about. That's just my experience.
No, that's fair. We want to know your perspective. Yeah. I'm trying to understand something. So her smoking regularly or frequently, was that the issue for you rather than her actually smoking at all? Or because I get it, I know your business partner, whatever, but for you personally, when we first asked you, you said obviously you had done a little bit of marijuana in the past or whatever.
No,
so is it something?
It's not that I don't ever smoke. Like, here, it's legal here, you know, and every once in a while I'll smoke. I don't have a problem. And I've smoked with Karla before, you know, but it's one of those things where I don't want to be with someone that's they're doing that every day.
Regularly.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the issue is the frequency of her doing it regularly. It's not a once off or whatever. It's a regular aspect that for you does not work for you. It does not align with you.
Yeah. And again, like, I can't remember the last time I smoked, you know?
So was that something that the experts asked you in terms of deal breakers? Was that something that you became aware of during the show in terms of a deal breaker, or was that something that you had before?
No, I mean, it was something that I talked to her about, and I mentioned it to her, and she, like you said, she even told me like I think 2 or 3 weeks after we got 2 weeks after we got back, 3 weeks after we got back, she was like, look, I'm not, you know, I've stopped smoking. I was like, hell yeah, that's awesome, you know. And this was just between her and I, and I mean, I appreciated that, but I don't blame her for going back to it, because again, that's her coping. Maybe she was coping with the stress of the situation, and I get it. It was tough to be in that situation, you know.
The spirituality aspect, big thing.
Yeah, big thing
for you. Big thing for you. What was the discrepancies between the two of you in terms of the spiritual aspect? Because, you know, we know that obviously you do believe in God. Like you said earlier on, you believe in God. But obviously she has many different various practices. But she also said that you carry a crystal around your neck at one point. She said, like, you know, or some sort of crystal around your neck. So she was confused as to why this now became an issue. So talk to us, bring us into your perspective and your viewpoint.
Yeah. Why
spirituality had become a dividing block for both of you.
It's just, we were way too different in the like, you know, she often hugged trees, which I'm not even judging her on that. Like, I get it. There's the grounding, and you know, it does make sense, because Earth has a charge. Like, if you talk about physics, like, you know, we have a gravitational pull just like Earth does, you know, so we also have a charge. That's why whenever, you know, we pick up too much static, we shock each other, you know, so we have charges. There's energy there, physics wise, but I think more of an aspect of science, you know. I don't think about it as an aspect of a spiritual thing that, like, it means anything extra, you know what I mean? The tarot, like, yeah, if my brother does tarot, like, I don't believe in any of that stuff, you know. Like, I just don't. I believe that your free will and your decisions and your hard work and ethics drive your success. You know, I believe that the universe doesn't govern things so much, but your ability to navigate yourself through the universe is what really drives success. You know, someone can like do all these rituals, but then they don't do the work. They're not going to succeed. It just doesn't happen. You know, like if I'm a sales guy and I'm sitting there asking the crystals or the tarot, like it's not going to work. I got to pound the pavement, get in a car, drive from here to wherever, knock on doors, ask, hey man, like I'm interested in working with your company, and you're going to get, a lot of people are going to shut the door and they're going to tell you, I already have a guy, I already have a supplier. That's what, for me, what it is, you know? So like that, everything like from the hugging the trees, from the crystals. And yeah, I do have crystals, but for me, it's just like, I just think they look cool, you know? So I'll wear them and it's a cool accessory. It's nothing more. It means nothing more than that. I don't pray to these crystals. I don't do any kind of rituals with the crystals. I don't burn any kind of weird things in my house. Like I'll burn a candle because if I take a poop, I don't want it to stink, you know, or if I cook, I want it to smell good, you know, but that's the extent of it. And it, for me, it was overwhelming. That's just my experience. I'm not judging her. I'm just telling you my experience. Yeah.
That's fair. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think everyone has the right to be able to state what they feel is spiritually aligned for them. You know, there are Christians who are Christian by label, and there's some Christians who are Christian who actually have a relationship with God. There's some who are further. There's different aspects. It depends on what you personally, you're requesting, what you're needing as well in that space. And I totally understand that as well.
Yeah. And listen, and I also respect the people that will say that, because you got to respect everyone. Some people are going to say, well, you pray to a God that doesn't exist. I respect what you think, but it's a matter of faith for me, you know?
Okay. I definitely hear that.
I mean, everybody has a different, there's a million ways to skin the cat as far as spirituality and religion and all that, you know? I believe in doing good and being good, but that was just it was just too much for me.
Okay. Well, we're on the last leg of this conversations. Let's bring it up to modern day, because obviously yourself and Karla have obviously been, I don't want to call it trading blows, but there have been, you know, some talks, you know, where you've shared perspectives, and it has gone back and forth. Now, one of the things that we didn't understand was, I guess from an audience perspective, is how it ended up going into business. In fact, there's another question. What was the purpose of befriending Karla after the show? Because I know you guys developed the friendship, but she wanted more. Now, we can see that. It looks like she wanted more. So what was the thinking behind going into a friendship after? Why are we agreeing to go into a friendship and then agreeing to go into a business?
So here's the deal. The friendship, when I posted a picture of my girlfriend on my Instagram a few weeks back, I had like 3 or 4 exes of mine that literally went in the comments and said, "Congratulations, Juan, I'm so happy for you." I don't feel like I create enemies. I don't walk around the world trying to create enemies. Like I have really pretty decent like not friendships, like, you know, it's not like we hang out, but I'm amicable and civil with my exes. So, you know, that was just, I proposed it because of that. I wanted to say, hey, like at the end of the day, it didn't work out, but life goes on, you know, like you're great. And I wish you nothing but really awesome things in life. And if you need help with anything, let me know. The business thing is because Juancho's Ponchos was Karla's idea, you know? So like, I just actually launched it on my Instagram today. I actually like officially launched it, and we're selling, like, the idea is we're going to sell t-shirts with like different slogans and things that we said that people like, you know, that they liked. I wrote a bunch of them down when I watched the show. So there's a bunch of funny stuff. The t-shirts aren't out yet because we're still trying to source them, but like there's a notebook, because we kept a notebook with all the things that we talked about on, as far as like trying to communicate. We always use the notebook for our relationship. And they didn't show that, but I think that's a good tactic for couples to use a notebook to keep each other accountable. And then there's a sticker on there, and then we're going to sell ponchos. So like for me, look, she came up with the idea, and then I said, okay, well, I'm going to do this because I just love executing ideas, whether whether it's good or bad, if it doesn't work out or if it does. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And I think, no, like, don't, I hope people don't get it twisted. Like, I did go on my social media today and I launched it, and I was clear that this is, it was Karla's idea. I executed. The website is my website now. So it's like, if you go in there, it's Juan Franco. It talks about me. It's my experience. But when you go into the shop, it's all the Juancho's Poncho stuff. And anything that's Juancho's Ponchos is her idea. So we decided that since it was her idea, I'm going to execute it. We'll split the profit 50-50. And I'm a man of my word. As much as people like to doubt me or maybe think that I'm just the shitty guy, whatever people want to say about me, I know there's half and half out there. I told her I would do this, and even if we had problems, I kept my word. I'm going to do it. The other thing, the other thing is that with every business, when you start a business, there's got to be an end goal. And for me, the end goal is always helping people. I've always wanted to have a platform to help people, and that's why I started FlightMate. So if you go to my website for FlightMate and you look at the About Us information, I started that for philanthropy reasons, because I thought, well, if we can turn this into like other apps that are multi-billion-dollar companies, and we could take the profits, or at least a portion of the profits, and we could create water treatment facilities. Because in places like Africa and since your family's from Ghana and Colombia, there's a lot of rural places that don't have clean water. There's water there. There's just no clean water because there's the water's polluted and there's no way to treat the water, and the government won't spend enough money to do that. So that's why I started FlightMate, because I thought if we can turn this into a multi-billion-dollar company, then we could do something for people, for really poor people on earth that don't have clean drinking water and don't have food. With Juancho's Ponchos, that's my end goal too. So when I launched it today, I said, okay, well, Karla's going to get her 50% as promised for all the Juancho's Poncho stuff. And then whatever my half of the money is, 50% of my half is going to be donated to a nonprofit or an organization of my followers' choice. So once a month, at the end of every month, whatever money we are able to make from the products, I'm going to let my followers like submit, and have a chance at donating to one of their organizations of their choice, which I'll make the final decision. But that's, listen, no matter how many problems Karla and I have had in the past 2 weeks, I made a promise, I made a commitment, and I live by my word. So yeah, I mean, I'm doing it, and it's her idea, so I can't deprive her. I can't take the credit for something that she thought about.
Last few questions then. In respect to that, obviously you are in business with her and you are a man of your word. I totally get that. How is this working in amongst all the things that are happening? So we've got the business we're running. You're a man of your word, I hear it. But then we have you guys having your, I guess, public back and forth a little bit. You feel a little bit uneasy with how your secrets have been handled. How do you handle business with someone that you feel uneasy at this particular time and moment in the way that they've handled you?
Yeah.
And
well, I mean,
how you've handled your secrets of privacy.
Well, to be honest with you, with Juan, yeah, obviously, like Karla and I, from her perspective, which I respect, I've crossed lines that she didn't want me to cross, which again, I've never, ever said anything that's outside of anything that she has either publicly published or has been showed on national TV, Then for me, from my perspective, she also crossed some serious lines, and even played around with some of the things that we even signed on paper that we wouldn't do, that is totally separate. Than our feelings towards each other are totally separate. So we'll never have that normal friendship again. Like for me, it's unfortunate, but I'll never go back to that place. For me, those are two separate things. The company, it's a brand, and who knows how long hopefully it'll keep us up the steam, because I want to do it for a good cause. But I'm running the whole thing, so I'm literally, if it does make any money, I'm just cutting her a check, so she's not really having to do anything. So it's pretty straightforward, I'm managing the whole thing. I made the initial investment with like, I hired a company called First Page Marketing out of Savannah, Georgia. And well, it's my sister's company, but obviously there's an expense there because they had to build the website and spend all the time to create the shop. And then, but I'm managing that whole aspect of it. You know, she's really hands off, so it's pretty straightforward. I mean, from her perspective, it's great because hopefully she gets paid. You know.
Mm. So how do you try? So again, because I know you answered it, but you answered it in a way of from her perspective. So how do you navigate? Because you are the one you also feel hurt in this situation, right? You feel like
Yeah.
there's a bit of a betrayal that's happened.
Yeah, it's a little bit of I feel violated. Yes.
Yes. So
Yeah.
how do
I
you
mean,
handle that
yeah.
alongside doing
Well,
business together? Because that friendship's now pretty much in a bin now.
yeah,
You have to
it's
try and
done.
rebuild it.
I look at it more as I made a promise, and it was aired on national TV, and I need to go through with what I said I was going to do.
Okay. Okay. I hear that. I hear that. Final questions then. What have you learned from this whole process? Because obviously it's been 8 weeks, but it's been longer than that because you guys had to wait a whole year as well. What have you learned from this process? Being married at first sight, being married to Karla. What are some of the learns that Juan has garnished from this experience?
I think from this experience, I've learned that I don't regret it, regardless of the problems that we've had in the past couple of weeks. I can't change my outlook on my experience at Married at First Sight. I'll say this: I still think Karla and I had a lot of fun. I still think it was a really awesome experience. I still think Kinetic treated us pretty well, you know, in the grand scheme of things. I'm not, you know, I don't have any ill feelings towards the experts or the process. I get it. It's TV, you know, it's entertainment. They're trying to make sure that people are entertained. It's the entire reason we're having this conversation right now. What I've learned is you really got to be careful who you tell, you know, anything to, because like, look, a lot of people are out there saying like, well, tell us the secret. It's like, are you retarded? Like, are you dumb? You know, like, I'm sorry. Now I'm going to get fucking backslash for saying that. I apologize. Well, anyways, I'm like, come on, man. This is it's literally the law that we have a right to privacy. It's like, you know, it's my right. It's my right. Just like you have your right to privacy, and whatever you do with your partner, there's some things that just shouldn't leave the room. You know, that's between you and your partner, especially in this case. So like, I've learned that you really got to be careful who you tell certain things to, because you don't never know people. You know, you never know who you're dealing with. You know, and this is that's my biggest lesson. But as far as this being a bad experience, it wasn't. It was a good experience. I really had a lot of fun. It was a good experience. Karla during the show was great. You know, we had a lot of fun. It wasn't negative. You know, yes, I didn't think she was my match. You know, I didn't think that there was a lot of things that I'm looking for in a partner that I didn't see in that marriage. But at the end of the day, we did have fun, and I can't, just because we've had problems now doesn't mean that I'm going to go back and like change everything I've ever said about my experience on the show. It stands. I had fun. I had a great time.
What accountability will you have to take? Do you take from this situation between you and Karla?
I think the accountability that I take, I don't regret that answer that I put in the forum, in that YouTube channel, because if you ask me now what were the reasons why it didn't work out between myself and my match, those are the reasons. And they've all been televised. You know, there's plenty of footage out there that you can pull from, and even articles. What I do regret is I guess the only place where I will own up to like making assumptions is, you know, there was like this bot page that may or may not have been her, and I made the assumption it was her just because, or her family, just because it hasn't happened since, you know. And also the bio for me kind of gave it away, you know. So it just, when I read it out loud, it sounded like it was like, oh, this is Karla, yeah. But again, I could be totally incorrect, so I'll own up to that. You know, I'm sorry. if Karla ever watches this, which I doubt she will, my apologies, because that was a wrongful assumption, and I was just heated in the moment, you know. But as far as my response, I don't regret it, because they're all things that actually happened on the show.
Where are you now, and what new ventures are you going into?
Yeah, so right now, you know, I'm working diligently with my current relationship. Things are going great. I'm working really hard, you know, with my job, because I do still keep my job, and things are just good. I mean, I feel like my work is taking off. I feel happy. I mean, aside from the past couple of weeks of this whole situation, because it does take a toll on you. It's emotional toll. I feel like, you know, my family's good. I mean, I'm hoping I go out to see my family soon. I've been traveling a ton for work. So I was in Vegas in January for a big trade show, for a concrete trade show. I was in, I have the upper Midwest as my territory. So I go to Omaha, Nebraska quite often. I was in South Dakota for another business. So a lot of things are just business driven for me right now, you know.
I love that. Is there any last things you'd love to address or speak about or clarify before we bring the conversation to a close?
Yeah, no, I mean, the only thing I want to say is that, look, I don't want anybody to hate anybody. I don't want anybody to pick sides. All I was trying to do was just, like, you know, speak up on the way that everything made me feel, and that, you know, I hope that people can respect not only my privacy, but the privacy of all those other cast members on the show and anyone that's involved in reality TV, because at the end of the day, we are opening our entire lives and existence to you guys. And it's not easy to be, like, you know, criticized and chastised and constantly week after week having to, because it's, you know, curiosity killed the cat. It's really hard to not look at some of these things. And some of these things are hurtful, and no matter how thick of your skin is, it's tough to look at, you know. And again, we're normal people, so we're having to navigate with all of a sudden being like little tiny celebrities. And that's, so just be mindful, guys, that, like, we are real people. This was a real issue that Karla and I had, but at the end of the day, be kind to her. Anyone that, like, is on my side, be kind to her. She is also a human being. Anyone that's on her side, have a little empathy for me. You know, I'm sure she doesn't want you to hate me either, you know.
I respect that. Well, listen, Juan, you have been open and you have shared your perspective. I've understood you a bit much better now. You know, and I appreciate you taking the time to come out in here, and I honor the fact that you were able to engage in this conversation, because it is not easy to share your perspective.
Absolutely.
And your thoughts as well, you know. So listen, we definitely will check in with you, obviously, in the next few months, to make sure you're doing okay and doing well as well. And I appreciate your time as well. So I'll just say to the audience, thank you so much for coming through. This has been an enthralling conversation with myself and Juan, and it's been such a powerful moment to get you on here and share your perspective, because we watched you all season long. So it's good to hear your particular perspective as well. Okay. And so, we'll leave it there. I do have some super chats to read out really quickly for the audience. It said, great interview, Juan. Nothing wrong with worrying about your character being tarnished by Karla. Possibly sharing your secret with family is wrong. Okay, that was from Crystal P. And then Ayala said, great interview, LBB with Juan. I get it, Juan. Okay, so those are the two super chats they sent in as well. So I appreciate that. Listen, audience, thank you so much. Look, we're going to be back again on the 1st of April. We have Karla. Yes, because the story is not complete without the other side. We like to have both sides to the table. So, Juan, thank you for opening up the table to discuss some of those key issues. And I hope those who have heard you have been able to understand you a bit more. And we'll definitely see you around soon. I need some help on some business ideas. I might have to consult you.
No, well, hey, thanks. Before we go, thank you so much for reaching out and having me. Thank you for reaching out to Karla. I think that's actually the way to do it, is to have both of us on there and have an impartial conversation. I commend you for that. I think that's what a good, you know, like I'd say journalist, or I don't know, you know, I would say that's what you are at this point, maybe. That's what they should do. I mean, it's the approach that you should take, because she has her story, and I think we both have valid feelings and perspectives, and good job for doing that. I'm glad you're getting her on here too, because she deserves her chance to speak as well.
Thank you, and I appreciate it, man. Honestly, someone said you should start a podcast on business, so it looks like you might have a little fan base going for your business podcast, my friend.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate everybody, whether you're, you support me or not. Like, again, nothing but love for everyone. And thank you so much for having me on.
It's a pleasure. Honestly, audience, thank you so much. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. There's not much I wouldn't do. I'm joking. There's a lot of things I wouldn't do anymore. But make sure you behave out there as well. We'll see you on the 1st of April at 2 p.m. EST. Where we're talking to Juan. We're talking to Karla. Sorry, not Juan. We're talking to Karla, and we'll get the other side of the story as well. All right. Stay safe. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. I appreciate you guys. See you soon. Bye bye. Throw.